acids, bases, and salts. So today I would like us to discuss the properties of acids. So to discuss the properties of acids and basically the chemical properties, the first property is that acids react with metals, especially the ones that are moderately reactive, react with moderately reactive metals to form a salt and hydrogen gas. So when acids react with moderately reactive metals, we form a salt and hydrogen gas. And basically what we are saying here is that not all metals react with acids. We have some metals, especially those ones below hydrogen, the reactivity series. Those ones do not react with acids. It's only those metals that are above hydrogen in the reactivity series. That's why we're talking about the moderately reactive metals to form a salt and hydrogen gas. Now in this reaction, effervescence is observed. Effervescence is the hissing sound that is produced when there is a gas that is being produced. The hissing sound that tells us that there is actually a gas that is being evolved. So in this reaction, the effervescence is as a result of the hydrogen gas that is being produced. So effervescence is observed due to evolution of hydrogen gas. And the faster the effervescence, the faster the reaction. So if there is a lot of effervescence being observed, then that means that reaction is faster. But if effervescence is slow, that is just a few bubbles of a gas are observed, then it means that that is a slower reaction. Now, so we'll take some examples of a metal such as magnesium reacting with dilute hydrochloric acid, and on this we get magnesium chloride, which is a salt plus hydrogen gas. So magnesium plus hydrochloric acid, we get magnesium chloride and hydrogen gas. So every time we are using hydrochloric acid, we get salts that are referred to as chlorides, hence magnesium chloride. So what has actually happened here is that the magnesium has replaced the hydrogen in the hydrochloric acid, so that we have formed magnesium chloride. And then the hydrogen that has been displaced is the one that forms the hydrogen gas. So to balance the equation, we have two hydrogen, just like the other case. Then we put the states. Magnesium is a solid. Hydrochloric acid, we are using it in aqueous solution. So magnesium chloride will be aqueous and hydrogen will be a gas. So in this case, there is evolution of hydrogen gas. Another example, we'll take a metal such as zinc plus sulfuric 6 acid, where we shall get zinc sulfate plus hydrogen gas. So that equation is already balanced. So what we can see is that the zinc has replaced the hydrogen, has completely replaced all the hydrogen atoms that are in the acid to form zinc sulfate. And the hydrogen that has been displaced is the one that forms the hydrogen gas. So that is a solid. This is aqueous. We have aqueous and we have a gas. Now, how can we know that the gas that is actually being produced is hydrogen gas? So we look at the chemical test. Chemical test for hydrogen gas. And what we can actually say is that hydrogen gas burns in air with a pop sound. So that is the chemical test for hydrogen gas. That hydrogen gas, when burns in air, or when it burns in air that is rich in oxygen, there is a pop sound that is produced. And that pop sound is the one that indicates that the gas is actually hydrogen gas. So what we are basically saying that is that anytime an acid reacts with a metal, there will be the formation of a salt and a hydrogen gas. We can also take another property, and this is acids react with bases to form a salt and water only. So when acids react with bases, we form a salt and water only. And this type of a reaction is called neutralization. This type of a reaction is called neutralization. In other words, we are saying that the acid is being neutralized. The base is being neutralized. So in this case, we are forming a substance or a product that is neutral. So some examples, we can take a base such as sodium hydroxide plus hydrochloric acid, and on this again the sodium replaces the hydrogen, so you get the sodium chloride, and the displaced hydrogen combines with the hydroxide ions to form water. All of them are in solution form, and the equation is already balanced. We can take a different acid. We can take sulfuric acid plus potassium hydroxide, and here we shall have potassium sulfate plus water. So sulfates are salts formed from sulfuric acid or from sulfuric 6 acid. So to balance the equation, balance the potassium to balance with that, and also the hydrogen to balance with this. So we have to make sure that every time we write an equation, that equation is balanced. That equation is properly balanced. The third property is that acids react with metal carbonates or hydrogen carbonates, metal carbonates or hydrogen carbonates to form a salt, water, and carbon 4 oxide. and carbon 4 oxide gas. So acids react with metals or with metal carbonates or hydrogen carbonates to form three products here. There is a salt, there is water, and there is carbon 4 oxide. Also in this reaction, effervescence is observed. Effervescence is observed due to evolution of carbon 4 oxide. Due to evolution of carbon 4 oxide gas. So that is another reaction that shows that there is a gas that is produced, and that is why the observation that is made, there is effervescence. Every time there is a gas being produced, there is effervescence. We'll take some examples. So you can have magnesium carbonate. This one is a solid because it is insoluble, plus nitric 5 acid. And on this we'll have magnesium nitrate as the salt. There will be carbon 4 oxide plus water. So basically, there are three products there. To make sure that the equation is balanced, we'll balance the hydrogen and also the nitrogen and the oxygen. And the equation will be like that. So here we are forming a salt. A salt that comes from nitric acid is a nitrate. So nitrates are salts obtained from nitric acid. Then there is carbon 4 oxide plus water. Another example, we can have calcium carbonate plus hydrochloric acid. And here we shall have calcium chloride plus carbon 4 oxide gas plus water. So basically that, then you balance the chlorides and they are balanced, and that is it. So in each of these, there is carbon 4 oxide that is being produced. So it is important to also understand what is the chemical test for carbon 4 oxide. What actually tells us that the gas being produced is carbon 4 oxide gas. So if we take this carbon 4 oxide and then we bubble it into calcium hydroxide solution, we form a white precipitate. So we can say that carbon 4 oxide forms a white precipitate with calcium hydroxide. So when it is bubbled into calcium hydroxide solution, it forms a white precipitate. And that calcium hydroxide is also what we call lime water. So when the gas is bubbled into lime water, it forms a white precipitate. And what happens is that the equation for the formation of the white precipitate is that the carbon 4 oxide is a gas plus calcium hydroxide solution forms calcium carbonate, plus water. And this calcium carbonate is now the white precipitate. That is the white precipitate. However, if excess of carbon 4 oxide is added to the white precipitate dissolves to form a colorless solution. So you can say that, however, when excess carbon 4 oxide is bubbled into the white precipitate, the precipitate dissolves into a colorless solution, or to form a colorless solution. So this is actually what happens, that when calcium carbonate plus water, which are the products of the first equation, then we add excess carbon 4 oxide, then we end up forming calcium hydrogen carbonate. So we end up forming calcium hydrogen carbonate, and this one is a colorless solution. So we get these are colorless solution. So basically, we have seen the three properties of acids as they react with metals, as they react with bases, and as they react with metal carbonates and hydrogen carbonates. So an assignment. So the assignment, the first question, complete the following chemical equations as indicated. And then number 2, what is the test for hydrogen gas and carbon 4 oxide gas? So we'll stop there. Until next time, goodbye.
Hello learners, welcome to our today's lesson. We'll be introducing a new unit called ratio and proportion. Ratio and proportion. Ratio and proportion. And by the end of this unit, you should be able, you the learner should be able to, number 1, work out problems involving ratio. The second objective, by the end of this unit, you should be able to work out problems involving simple direct and indirect proportion. There are only 2 objectives. The first objective is related to the first part of the unit. The second is related to the second one. So we have ratio and proportion. Those are 2 things. Ratio and proportion. We will start off with ratio. Okay, ratio, and you have seen by the end of this unit, you should be able to work out problems involving ratio. So let's focus our attention on ratio. Then we will move on to proportion later on. Today we will focus on ratio. Now, a ratio is simply a relationship between two or more quantities, that express how bigger or smaller, between, we are talking about a ratio being a relationship between two or more quantities that expresses how bigger one is from the other quantities, all right? Relationship between quantities. In other words, ratios are used to compare. Ratios are used to compare quantities. Ratios are used to compare quantities. A relationship between two or more quantities that expresses their relationship. For example, we may give an example here and say, example of a relationship is, if Ali's weight is 40 kg or kilograms, and Aisha's weight is 50 kilograms. Okay, these are two quantities, 40 kilograms and 50 kilograms. If Ali's weight is 40 kilograms and Aisha's weight is 50 kilograms, then their weight can be expressed as 40 to 50. Can be expressed as 40 to 50. When simplified further, 40 to 50, this 40 to 50 in its simplest form, would be 4 to 5. This 0 cancels out with this, so that we have 4 to 5 being the ratio of Ali's weight to Aisha's weight. Okay, Aisha's weight. Another example would be if you are to prepare a meal comprising of mixture of beans and maize. A meal comprising of a mixture of beans and maize. Traditionally, this is what we call githeri. If you are to cook githeri comprising of, say, 2 tins of beans and 3 tins of maize, 2 tins beans, 3 tins maize, then these quantities can be expressed in a ratio the ratio 2 to 3, 2 to 3. So these are examples of ratios. Examples of ratios. You have said ratios, or ratio helps us in comparing quantities or amounts. Quantities or amounts. Now, having said that, we can go ahead and state that one very important points here, ratio should be always expressed in simplest form. Should be always expressed in simplest form. Then number 2, we can also state that ratio should be always expressed in same unit. Always be expressed using the same unit. For example, here we say that Ali's weight is 40 kilograms. Aisha's weight is 50 kilograms. So these kilograms and these kilograms is what we are saying here, the same unit. You should not have a scenario where a quantity is expressed in a different unit from the other. They have to be the same unit. You should not have ratios being expressed, for example, in kilograms to grams. No, that should not be the case. So these two are very important when dealing with ratios. Number 1, ratios should be always expressed in simplest form. Number 2, ratios should be always expressed using the same unit. Let us take another example here. Another example. Number 1. What is the ratio of 60 centimeters to 1 meter? What is the ratio of 60 centimeters to 1 meter? This is the answer. Ratio of the ratio of 60 centimeters to 1 meter. 60 centimeters to 1 meter. You can see here the first quantity is in centimeters, the second quantity is in meters, and you have just said here ratio should be expressed using the same unit. So we have to convert these meters into centimeters. In this case, we'll have 60 centimeters to 100 centimeters. We have converted the 1 meter into centimeters, and we all know that 100 centimeters equal 1 meter. So this one, the first rule has been met. The second rule here has been met. You express the ratio in same unit. So these units are the same. The first rule says that ratios should be expressed in simplest form. Now expressing 60 to 100 in its simplest form, this 0 cancels out with this 0. We have 6 to 10. 2 goes here 3 times. 2 goes here 5 times. Therefore, 60 to 100 in its simplest form, we have 3 to 5. 3 to 5. So, the ratio of 60 meters to 1 meter will be equal to 3 to 5. 3 to 5. Then another example. I hope you are following. Another example, can give many examples. Example, are you following? Example number 2. Express 400 grams as a ratio of 2 kilograms. 400 grams as a ratio of 2 kilograms. 400 grams to 2 kilograms. Again, you can see these two quantities have different units, grams and kilograms. Grams and kilograms. We can convert these kilograms into grams, then we get the ratio in its simplest form. We all know that 1 kilogram is equal to 1000 grams. Therefore, 2 kilograms will be equal to 2 times 1000 over 1. 1 kilogram is equal to 1000 grams. Therefore, 2 kilograms will be equal to 2 times 1000 times 1, which is equal to 2000. So, we have here 4000 grams to 2000 grams. We have made sure that the quantities, number 1, are of the same unit. Then we can simplify further. 400 to 2000, 400 to 2000 in its simplest form. 400 goes here once. 400 goes here how many times? 5 times. Therefore, the ratio of 400 grams to 2000 grams will be equal to 1 to 5. 1 to 5. So, a very important rule. Number 1, ratios should be expressed in simplest form. 2, ratio should be expressed in the same unit. We can take another example. Example number 3. Example number 3. Example 3. What is the ratio of 15 minutes to 1 hour? What is the ratio of 15 minutes to 1 hour? The ratio is 15 minutes to 1 hour. All right. You can see the units are not the same. First step, make sure the units are the same. So here we have minutes and hours. So we'll convert this 1 hour to minutes, and we know 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. Therefore, 1 hour, this 1 hour will be equal to 1 times 60 over 1, which is equal to 60 minutes. So, 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. So, the ratio can be rewritten as 15 minutes to 60 minutes. 15 to 60. 5 goes here once, okay, simplifying the ratio, the simplest form. 15 goes here once. 15 goes here how many times? 4 times. So, the ratio would be 1 to 4. 1 to 4. Are we together? Yes, we are together. Let's work out another example. I take as many examples as time will allow. Example number 4. Example number 4 reads, simplify the ratio. Simplify the ratio 90 to 60 to 120. That is the example. Simplify 90 to 60 to 120. Simplifying, we divide this side by 10, because zeros are common. This 0 cancels out with this 0, cancels out with this 0. Right? 3 goes here, is common. 3 goes here 3 times, 3 goes here 2 times, 3 goes here 4 times. So simplifying the ratio to its simplest form, we have 3 to 2 to 4. 3 to 2 to 4 is the answer. Simplify the ratio 90 to 60 to 120 is equal to 3 to 2 to 4. 3 to 2 to 4. Our last example, example number 5. Example 5. Express 5/6, 1/2, and 1/4 in ratio form. Express 5/6, a half, and a quarter in ratio form. 5/6, 1/2, 1/4. So the first step is to do away with the denominators, because these are fractions. So we will do that by first finding out the least common multiple of these 3 denominators, 6, 2, and 4. What is the LCM? And the LCM here is 12. The LCM is 12. So we multiply 12 by all the fractions so that we remove the denominator. So here we multiply 5/6 by 12, multiply here a half by 12, multiply here a quarter by 12. So that 6 goes here once, 6 goes here how many times? Twice. So that we have here 10. 2 goes here once, 2 goes here 6 times, 6 times 1, 6. 4 goes here once, goes here 3 times, 3 times 1, 3. So this is now expressed in ratio form. So we have 10 to 6 to 3. 10 to 6 to 3. So where you have quantities expressed as fractions and you want to convert the fractions, or to convert the fractions in ratio form, we first do away with the denominators, then simplify it to the least in the simplest form. So 10 to 6 to 3 is the ratio form of 5/6, 1/2, and 1/4. So these are examples which we have done in our today's lesson to help us understand ratio. Remember, we had an objective. We say that by the end of this topic or subtopic on ratios, we should be able to work out problems involving ratios. This was our first lesson where we introduced ratio, and we defined ratio as a relationship between two or more quantities that expresses the relationship, expresses how bigger the quantities are. We've said ratio is a relationship between two or more quantities that expresses how bigger the quantities are from each other. And we've given examples of these relationships, all right? And we started by looking at a relationship between Ali's weight and Aisha's weight. We went further and gave some important rules when working out ratios. We say that ratio should be always expressed in its simplest form. Then number two, ratio should always be expressed using the same units. We have looked at examples to help us see how this is done, how to simplify ratios into the simplest form. You have seen that. We have worked out 5 examples. It is now your turn to do our assignments. Before we close the lesson, I'll give you some exercise as it is our custom. This is our custom. In mathematics, you have also to do exercise. A good student is one who carries out exercise. Number 1, write the following ratios in the simplest form. Write the following ratios in their simplest form. The first one is the first one here is 12 to 15, B 42 to 14, C 400 ml to 1000 ml, D 25 grams to a half kilogram, E 26 to 39 to 65. All right. Then we have F is 2 to 3, 5, 6, 7 over 12. FG 250 ml to 1 liter After G we have H 1 day to 48 hours. Then number 2, in a factory 65% are men and the rest The rest are women. The rest are women. What is the ratio of men to women? What is the ratio of men to women? Question. Then lastly, just 3 assignments. In a library, a half of the books are English, 3/8 are mathematics, and the rest are of science. The question is, what is their ratio? What is their ratio? In other words, express the relationship between the English books, mathematics books, and science books in ratio form. Remember again the definition of ratio. We said is a relationship between two or more quantities that helps us understand how big the quantities are from each other. Ratios are used to compare quantities. And at that, we've come to the end of our today's lesson. I say bye-bye and God bless you.
Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Hello learners, my name is Stephen Kariungi. Today we continue with our topic of discussion, and the topic is acids, bases and salts. So today I would like us to discuss the identification of cations using sodium hydroxide solution and using aqueous ammonia. So we can use the sodium hydroxide solution and ammonia solution to identify the presence of particular cations, or to identify the presence of particular positive ions. For instance, in Form 3 you learnt about identification of cations using ammonia solution. So we are going to compare that with what we have just learnt about the behavior of sodium hydroxide when it comes into contact with various salts. So we are going to put it in the in form of a table. So on one side we'll have the cations, and then we see what happens on addition of sodium hydroxide solution, and then finally what happens on the addition of aqueous ammonia, which is the same as ammonia solution. So we list the cations. We have zinc ions, lead 2 ions, aluminium ions, copper 2 ions. Then we have iron 2 ions, iron 3, we'll have magnesium, the table continues. So we'll also have calcium ions. So these are the cations, positively charged ions, calcium ions, barium ions. The ions that we'll see how they are identified. So for zinc ions, when you add sodium hydroxide, we form a white precipitate that dissolves in excess sodium hydroxide. And that is applicable for both zinc ions, lead 2 ions, and aluminium ions. So all those ions, they form a white precipitate that dissolves in excess sodium hydroxide. So when it comes to copper 2 ions form a blue precipitate that persists or that remains even when you add excess sodium hydroxide. For iron 2 ions, these form a green precipitate also that persists or that remains in excess sodium hydroxide. And iron 3 forms a brown precipitate also that persists with the addition of excess sodium hydroxide. Magnesium ions, these ones form a white precipitate that persists. Persists or remains means the same thing. So here it means that when you put a few drops of sodium hydroxide, we form a blue precipitate with copper ions. And then on addition of excess, the blue precipitate remains. In the case of iron 2 ions, there is the formation of a green precipitate that remains even on addition of excess sodium hydroxide. And then iron 3 ions, we form a brown precipitate that also remains, and that applies to magnesium. But for zinc, lead, and aluminium ions, they are forming a white precipitate, but on addition of excess sodium hydroxide, the white precipitate dissolves in excess sodium hydroxide. So then we come to calcium, also forms a white precipitate, just like magnesium, that persists. And then, of course, barium ions also form a white precipitate that persists, even on the addition of the excess. So that is with respect to sodium hydroxide. When you test the same ions with aqueous ammonia, zinc ions, they form a white precipitate that dissolve in excess ammonia. That dissolve in excess ammonia, that is zinc ions. So zinc ions, in sodium hydroxide and in aqueous ammonia, they behave the same way. They behave the same way. They form a white precipitate, but when you add excess of either sodium hydroxide or ammonia solution, the precipitate dissolves, and we shall find out why much later. For lead and aluminium, these ones, they form white precipitate that persist in excess ammonia. That is applicable for aluminium and lead. So that is lead and aluminium. For copper ions, they also form a blue precipitate with aqueous ammonia, but the blue precipitate dissolves in excess. So there is blue PPT that dissolves in excess ammonia. For the iron 2, it's just the same here, green precipitate that remains. And also iron 3 ions, there is a brown precipitate that remains even with excess. Magnesium, the same, white precipitate that remains or that persists. Calcium, the same, white precipitate remains. And also barium, the white precipitate remains. So using this information, it is now possible to explain what is actually happening here. In all these situations, so for example, for the case of zinc, the reason why it forms a white precipitate is because zinc ions combine with hydroxide ions from the sodium hydroxide. They are in solution form, and this one forms zinc hydroxide. And zinc hydroxide is a white precipitate to balance there. So in this case and in this case, the sodium hydroxide adds the hydroxide ions. Ammonia solution also adds hydroxide ions. And in both cases, that hydroxide is dissolving. For lead and aluminium, the same. Lead 2 ions combine with hydroxide ions either from ammonia solution or from sodium hydroxide. So we form lead 2 hydroxide. Also a white precipitate. For aluminium, the same. We form aluminium hydroxide, which is also a white precipitate. But when it comes to copper, copper ions, when they combine with hydroxide, either from ammonia or from sodium hydroxide, they form copper 2 hydroxide, and this one is a blue precipitate. So copper does not form a white precipitate like the others. So the zinc, lead and aluminium, they form white precipitates. But for the case of copper, copper forms a blue precipitate. Iron 2 forms a green precipitate. This is because of the formation of iron 2 hydroxide. And this is a green PPT. And then you put a 2 to balance. Iron 3 you get hydroxide ions from either sodium hydroxide or from aqueous ammonia. We form iron 3 hydroxide, which is a brown precipitate. So to balance, so just something to note here is that iron 2 forms a green precipitate. Iron 3 forms a brown precipitate. If this green precipitate of iron 2 is left exposed to the air for some time, it turns brown. It turns brown. And that is because the iron 2 ions in the green precipitate are oxidized by the atmospheric air to form iron 3 ions. So that is something that is also good to note, that if the green precipitate of iron 2 ions is left exposed to the atmosphere for some time, it slowly turns brown. And that is because of oxidation by the atmospheric air. So the magnesium, this is a normal white precipitate like the others, which is magnesium hydroxide, white. So most of the precipitates here are white. Calcium also. Forms calcium hydroxide. This one is a slightly white precipitate. It's not as thick as the others. So this is a slightly white precipitate. Then barium finally combines with hydroxide ions, and then you form barium hydroxide, which is also a white PPT. So majority are those that form a white precipitate, but it is important to note a few exceptions of iron 3, iron 2, and copper, the ones that form precipitates that are not white in color. Also, we are saying that the white precipitate in zinc dissolves in excess of sodium hydroxide and in excess of ammonia. The lead 2 and aluminium, this one dissolves only in excess sodium hydroxide, but in excess ammonia, they persist. White precipitate persists in excess ammonia, as as indicated there. So write ionic equations for the formation of precipitates when using aqueous ammonia in zinc ions, lead 2 ions, copper 2 ions, and magnesium ions. So we'll stop there until next time. Goodbye.
So before we go on, in our previous lesson we looked at phrases. We talked about the noun phrase, the types of phrases, how a phrase is a group of words that functions as a single unit. And we looked at the various types of phrases. We looked at verb phrases, we looked at noun phrases, adjectival, prepositional, adverbial phrases, and we say that they are just groups of words but will function as that unit. That unit could be a verb, that unit could be an adjective, the unit could be an adverb, the unit could be a preposition, depending on how they are in a sentence. But now they are functioning as a group. So today we're looking at now another group of words that will function as a, we're looking at participle phrases. It will be the same thing. But now, before we go to participle phrases, we'll need to remind ourselves what a participle is. Because for it to function as a participle phrase, it must be a group of words. So I can just say it is a group of words that functions, a group of words that functions as a participle in a sentence. So this participle phrase. So what is a participle? So a participle, if we remind ourselves clearly, is a word, just a minute, is a verbal word that functions as an adjective. It's a verbal word that functions as an adjective. So that, what is a verbal word? For example, interesting. Interesting. Another word is arrived. These are verbal words. But now we're looking at them as we're looking at them as functioning as what? Adjectives. So that we can say interesting movie. Arrived, just not arrived, but expected guests. Tired visitors. So all these three words here, interesting, expected, tired, they are verbs, but they are functioning as what? Adjectives. What is an adjective? It's a word that gives us more information about a noun. So which movie? The interesting one. Which guests? The ones that we were expecting. Which visitors? The tired ones. Okay? Which pool? The swimming pool. Which baby? The crying baby. So that we say, when they function as an adjective, they are giving us more information about the baby. That's what an adjective does. So today we're looking at how a participle, a phrase, will function as an adjective. Because when we say that a group of words that function as a participle, we're looking at a group of words that function as an adjective. The only difference will be that there'll be no adjective in that sentence like an adjectival phrase. There'll be a participle. Okay? And before we go on, we have different types of participles. We have the present participle, which is normally called the ing participle. And then we have the, number 2, we have the past participle, which is called the ed/en participle. So that here, this participle again will be functioning as an adjective, but in an ing form or an ed/en participle. So when we begin with present participle, they are in form of an ing. For example, interesting, crying. Okay, they are ing participles. So, and then under, for example, now we have interesting movie, crying baby. So the underlined words are the participles. And then now past participles. Will be the ed/en ones. So that we have expected, we have stolen, we have broken, so that we can have expected guests have arrived. The stolen bicycle, the broken window. Okay, so broken here is not functioning as a verb. Stolen here is not functioning as a verb. It is functioning as an adjective. It is giving us more information about the adjective, the noun. The noun window, the noun bicycle, and the noun guests. So that when we say, now we're going to look at, we've looked at what a participle is, the types of participles, and now we're going to look at in a broader perspective, that is now in the participle phrase perspective. So now present participles. In a sentence that has a present participle. So when a sentence has a present participle, what does it mean? That the action in the main sentence, in the previous sentence, in the participle sentence, happens before the one in the main sentence happens. Now that we've learned what a participle is, we've reminded ourselves what a participle is, we're looking at now what a participle phrase is. And we've just said that a participle phrase is a group of words that functions as a participle in a sentence. So I'll just add, such a phrase begins with a present participle or a past participle. This participle phrase, it normally begins with either a present participle or a past participle. For example, now that we've said it's a group of words that functions as a participle, and that such a phrase begins with a present participle or a past participle. Let me give you now examples of these participle phrases. Okay? For example, shivering with cold. The cat went into the house to warm itself. Okay, so shivering with cold. What do you see here? The word shivering. Shivering now is the present participle. Okay, so it gives this sentence, shivering with cold, gives us more information about who? The cat. Okay, how is it functioning as an adjective here? Or how is it functioning as a participle? It is functioning as a participle in the sense that it is giving us more information about the what? The cat, which is the noun in this sentence, because all participles, they functioning as adjectives. So what is an adjective? It gives us more information about a what? A noun. So in this case, it will be a group of words that functions as a participle. So here, it's a group of words that gives us more information about what? The cat. It was shivering with cold, so it went to what? To warm itself in the house. Okay? Another example could be thinking the ground was dry. I sat down to rest. Okay? So, thinking the ground was dry is a participle phrase. It gives us more information about who? The I, who was thinking the ground was dry, so that this action can happen, so that he or she can sit down to rest. Okay? So what is the function of a present participle phrase? It means that the action in the participle phrase happens before the action in the main, with the main verb. Okay? The action in the participle phrase happens before the action in the main sentence. Okay? The function of a present participle. Now that is what we're going to look at. So we've just said that the present, we've given examples of a sentence that has present participles. Let me just add here. Present participle phrases. All right? So that this one is shivering with cold, the cat went into the house. It is a state that is happening in the present. Thinking it was on the ground was dry, I sat down to rest. So the function here, we're looking at now how does it function? Given those examples, the function of a present. So this present participle phrase, shivering with cold, we're not looking at this other part of the sentence. It may look like it's in the past, but what we're concentrating on is this part, shivering with cold. The cat went to the house to warm itself. Or thinking the ground was dry, I sat down to rest. So what is the function of the present participle phrase? So it is used to emphasize that the action in the participle phrase is immediately followed by the action in the main sentence. Okay, this shivering with cold is immediately followed by this other action. After noticing that it was shivering with cold, it immediately goes into the house to warm itself. After this person realizes that the ground was dry, immediately they sit down to rest. So it just emphasizes, it's just used for emphasis. This action is followed immediately by the action in the main sentence. So that is all about the what? The present participle phrase. All right? So let me give you an assignment to practice on it more so that when we come back next, we will look at now the past participle. Remember I told you that this participle phrase that functions as a participle in a sentence could begin with a what? A present participle or a past participle. So we've looked at participle phrases that have begun with what? Present participles. All right? Like shivering, like thinking, okay? Those ones begin with what? Present participles. That's why they are in the ing format. All right? So we're going to look at, the next time, in the next lesson, we're going to look at now sentences or maybe phrases that begin with what? Past participle phrases. So our assignment for today, let me just write a few questions here for practice. So let's read the questions. You are supposed to rewrite the sentences, replacing the underlined part with the present participle. The first one, the dog wagged its tail and beat the postman. So you are replacing this first part with a participle phrase, a present one. The second one, while she was tidying up her room, while she was tidying up her room, while she was tidying up her room, comma, she found some old photos, full stop. They are vegetarians and they don't eat meat, full stop. Again, in both sentences, you are replacing the underlined part with a present participle phrase. He was a good boy and helped his mother in the kitchen. Again, you're replacing the underlined part. As they didn't separate this, as they didn't have enough money, comma, they spent their holiday at home. Again, you replace the underlined part with a participle phrase. And then number 6, since we didn't watch the news every day, comma, we know what's going on in the world. We know what's going on in the world. Now, remember that there is something we need to note. Let me just say it as an NB. The participle phrase is separated from the rest of the sentence by a comma. So whenever you will be replacing, you make sure that the comma will follow the what? The participle phrase. You will separate the sentence, the participle phrase is separated from the rest of the sentence by a what? By a comma. So remember, when you're doing that assignment, remember to separate the what? The sentence, the participle phrase with the rest of the sentence by a comma. After writing the participle phrase, like in this case, shivering with cold, comma, the cat went into the house. Again, here again, we've seen that we've separated the sentence with what? The comma. Okay. Having said that, I wish you well, and we are looking forward to the next lesson, which will be about the past participle phrases.
Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Hello, students. Welcome to History and Government Form 4. We are learning a topic, international relations. That is the topic we are handling. And specifically, we are looking at the international organizations. We are studying the second international organization, that is the Commonwealth. Initially, we have studied the different or the other international organization, which was the United Nations. We studied and learned how it was formed, its structure, the affiliated bodies, its performance, its how it has been able to achieve its objectives, and what are the challenges it has been facing. Going further, we started learning about the Commonwealth, and we defined the Commonwealth as an association of independent states who were former colonies or who are part of British colony. So that is the Commonwealth. We also looked at its formation. What are the major characteristics or the features of Commonwealth nations, and then the principles or the ideals that drive the Commonwealth. So in our lesson today, we are going to study the structure of the Commonwealth. That is what we are studying in our today's lesson, the structure of the Commonwealth, the organization. When you talk of the structure, is the substance, what encompasses, what makes up the Commonwealth. How does it operate? Is it similar to the United Nations? We are going to know in our today's lesson. So, to start us off is to mention that the Commonwealth has three principal organs. It has three principal organs. It has three principal organs, which are, number one, has three principal organs. Number one, it is the heads of state summit. And then number two, we have the secretariat. The secretariat as the second organ or arm. And then lastly, we have the ministerial meetings. Ministerial meetings. So these are the principal organs of the Commonwealth. Apart from the three principal organs, it also has some other specialized agencies. So it has some agencies. It has some agencies that help it in running its or its affairs. We are going to also study it. So in the structure of Commonwealth, we have three principal organs, which is the heads of state summit. We have the ministerial meetings and also the secretariat. Those are the organs of the Commonwealth. So let us start with the first one, which is the heads of state summit. The heads of state summit. So remember, we said any member who was a colony of Britain is open to come and join the Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth brings together states or countries that were colonized or were dominions in the British Empire. So the heads of states summit is a meeting that brings together all heads of government. It brings all heads of government. Heads of government that are from member countries. So it could be a president, it could be a prime minister. Remember, different countries have different organizations. Like for example, in Kenya, we have a president. You have other nations which have prime ministers as the head of the country. So these heads of summit is where all the heads, whether you are the president or the prime minister, they come together in one meeting. So they meet after every they meet after every two years. They meet after every 2 years. So these heads of government come together after every 2 years. They have a meeting, and the summit is held in any of the member countries. It is rotational. It is not held in one place or in one nation. It is rotational. They go in different countries. So this year it could be held in Kenya. The other year it could be held in Tanzania. Not in Uganda. So you find that there are different areas or different countries where the summit is held. It's also opened. It is opened by the Queen. It is opened by the Queen or King of England. Remember, we said for these members of the Commonwealth, they pledge allegiance to the crown. That is the Queen. So the Queen is the head of the Commonwealth nation. So this summit is opened by the Queen. And also its functions is to they streamline or they discuss or they frame up policies that run the Commonwealth. So any policy concerning the Commonwealth countries is created by the heads of state summit. So when they come together to form different policies to manage their affairs as members of the Commonwealth organization. And also, apart from that, they discuss the political, the social and economic issues that are affecting member states. They discuss those issues that are affecting them as members of the Commonwealth. And now, when they are making a decision, when it comes to a decision making, they make decisions based on, they discuss until they come up with an amicable solution or a solution that is acceptable by all the members of the organization. So that forms the heads of state summit. I've said it brings together all the heads of state of the government, and also they meet after every 2 years, and it is rotational. They meet in different countries, and then the Queen is the head of the Commonwealth and opens he or she opens the the summit, and also they have different functions. That is, they make the policies of Commonwealth nations, and also they discuss and make solutions on issues that are affecting them as the Commonwealth. So that is number one. Number two, let us discuss the next organ, which is the ministerial meetings. Ministerial meetings. So these ones brings together ministers. It brings together ministers from different countries. They involve ministers in the defense, ministers in the defense, ministers in the education sector, ministers in the health sector, ministers in the health sector, defense sector, the education sector, and also ministers from the foreign affairs. So ministers in these dockets from different countries come together and discuss issues affecting these ministries. What are the challenges? What are the problems that they are having? And then they exchange ideas. They exchange information. So that means they meet regularly. They have regular. They have regular. They have regular. They have regular meetings. They have regular meetings. And oftenly, before the heads of states, or before this summit of the heads of states, you'll find that you'll have a ministerial meeting to make sure that if there are any issues that are supposed to be made, or there is a policy that is supposed to be made by the heads of states, the ministers will come together, discuss, right, and make recommendations that come to be discussed by or to be passed by the heads of state. So before we have a heads of state summit, the ministers will come together, meet and discuss. But in case there is something in between, they always meet every now and then to discuss common interests. So they have common interests. So each and every one of them, they discuss issues that are of interest, interest to them, common interest to them. So they meet every now and then, regularly, to discuss and forge a way forward concerning those dockets or those ministries. Now, that is the ministerial meetings. They meet each and every time. Now, we come to the other organ that is also very important. It's a very important organ of the Commonwealth, the Secretariat. The Secretariat. So this one is is involved with the day-to-day running of the Commonwealth or of the organization. So its headquarters is found in London, which is found in London. That is where we have the headquarters of the Secretariat. Remember, we have said the Secretariat is the body that is, or is the organ of the Commonwealth concerned with the day-to-day running of the organization. They are involved in running the matters each and every day that are required by the organization. It is headed by the secretary, general. It is headed by the Secretary General, who is appointed from among the members. The Secretary General has two deputies. He or she has two deputies, and also he also has two assistants to help him in running the day-to-day affairs of the secretariat. So, what are the duties of the secretariat? What are its functions? The functions include, number one, as I've mentioned, the day-to-day running. Day-to-day running of the organization. They are involved with the day-to-day running of the organization. That means if there is any business to be conducted, it is the duty of the secretariat to make sure that that business has been conducted. How is it going to be conducted? Where is it going to be conducted? It is the duty of the secretariat to make sure that the organization is running. And then number two, it circulates. It is involved in circulation of information. Circulation of information among members. So if there is an issue to be discussed among member countries, it is the duty of the secretariat to pass around that information from one nation to the other. So if one nation has a problem or has an issue that requires the attention of the whole organization, it is the duty of the secretariat to pass around that information. Number three, the third function is to make sure that it encourages projects. It encourages projects. It encourages projects that are of benefit to the members. It encourages projects that are of benefit to the members. So if there is a project that is going to benefit Commonwealth nations, it is the duty of the secretariat to popularize that project and encourage the governments to invest or to adopt that project. So it takes care of its members. So if there is a good idea or a good project that is going to benefit any of the countries, it is the work of the secretariat to go and encourage the governments to help in or to engage in adopting that project. And then number four, it coordinates the businesses. It coordinates the business of the organization. It coordinates the business of the organization. That means every policy that has been made by the summit, it is the one that is able to make sure that it has been able to take place. It works, or it makes sure that each and every section of the organization is running. If each organization or each arm of the arm is supposed to do a specific task, it is the duty of the secretariat to make sure that those tasks are being adhered to, or the activities are being done in the manner they are supposed to be done. And then lastly, or the last function or duty of the secretariat, it organizes the heads of states summit. We said this is held after every 2 years. So it is the work of the secretariat to make sure that the summit is held. It organizes where that summit is going to be held. Remember, there are so many countries, more than 50 countries are supposed to be meeting at one place, and these are heads of state. So it is the work of the secretariat to make sure that the summit is held after every 2 years, and it decides where it is going, or it prepares the venue where they are going to hold that summit. So it is the duty of the Secretariat to make sure that that summit has been held. So let us, we have looked at the three organs. Let us now take a look at the agencies that are affiliated to the Commonwealth, or that are part of the Commonwealth. The first one is the Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperation. Number one, it is the Commonwealth Fund for Technical. It is the Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperation. So this is the an agency that is concerned with funding of projects in the Commonwealth countries, and also in training, organizing training programs for different different sectors, and helping the member countries to be able to gain the right technical skills to run their programs. And also they provide experts to different nations. That is the Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperation. Number two, or the next agency, we have the Commonwealth Agricultural Bureau. Commonwealth Agricultural Bureau. This is another agency of the Commonwealth, and this is concerned with assisting the countries in agricultural production. It provides technical support to the members in terms of agricultural development. It provides research. It carries out research on different fields in agriculture to make sure that the countries or members of the Commonwealth have sufficient agricultural production. And then the other agency is the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. The Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. So this one brings together members of parliament from the nations that are affiliated or that are part of the Commonwealth. So they come together, discuss and share ideas of how to improve their debates, and also to make sure that they share how they can represent their people. And then lastly, we have the Commonwealth Regional Health Secretariat. Number four, we have the Commonwealth Regional Health Secretariat. So this one works hand in hand with the World Health Organization of the UN to make sure that they can improve the health and hygiene of the members of the Commonwealth. So these are the agencies that work together with the organs of the Commonwealth to make sure that there has been the countries of the Commonwealth have interacted peacefully, and they are continuing to develop. Now, let me give you an exercise as we end our lesson. We have learned about the structure of the Commonwealth, the structure of the Commonwealth. And I believe now it's a good time that I give you a revision question. The question is, discuss the structure of the Commonwealth, discuss the structure of the Commonwealth, outlining the major organs. Discuss the structure of the Commonwealth, outlining the major organs. So you should be able to discuss each and every organ of the Commonwealth and how they are formed, their membership, and their function. So that brings us to the end of our history and government lesson today. I've been your teacher, Conan Gakure. Until the next time, bye-bye.
Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Hello and welcome to our today's learning session. The subject is Primary Mathematics for Standard 8. The topic, ratio and proportion. We continue with the topic, ratio and proportion. In our today's lesson, we will answer one question from exercise 111 from the pupil's book. Exercise 111, question number 6, which I have recorded on the whiteboard. So learners, I want you to first attempt this question on your own. Then we'll work this problem here on the board so that we can compare your answer and my answer. The question reads, in a certain shop, the half-liter packet of milk and 1 kilogram loaf of bread are bought in the ratio of 1 to 2. One day, the shopkeeper got 1,840 shillings from bread after selling each loaf at 46 shillings. If she sold the milk at 25 shillings per half-liter packet, how much money did she get from the sale of milk that day? That's the question. How much money did she get from the sale of milk that day? Here is the answer. When answering word problems, learners first read the question and understand, then put down the formula. How do we get the answer to this question? How much money did she get from the sale of milk that day? Learners, the amount of money she got from the sale of milk is equal to the quantity of milk sold, and the quantity is measured in packets, the half-liter packets of milk. So you're going to have the number of packets, so you're going to multiply the number of packets of milk times the price per half-liter packet times the price per the half-liter packet times the price of the half-liter packet. So we need two things. we need to calculate the number of packets of milk by the price per liter. So we go to the question and check, do we have the number of packets of milk that was sold that day? The answer is no. Do we have the price per liter? The answer is yes. We are told if she sold the milk at 25 shillings per half liter packet. So the price per half liter packet is 25 shillings. What we do not know is the number of packets. And how do we calculate the number of packets? We use our knowledge of ratios. We are told that the ratio of 1 to 2, that is in a certain shop, the half liter packet of milk and loaf of bread are bought in the ratio 1 to 2. So we are going to have working. We have the ratio, learners, of milk to bread is 1 to 2. In this shop, the ratio of milk to bread is 1 to 2. When a customer buys 1 packet of milk, that customer also buys 2 loaves of bread. When 1 packet of milk is sold, 2 loaves of bread are sold in this shop. So we need to use this ratio in order to calculate the number of packets of milk sold. The number of packets of milk sold. And we will first calculate the quantity of bread, because we read that one day the shopkeeper got 1,840 shillings from bread after selling each loaf at 46 shillings. So with this information, we can calculate the quantity of bread. Then after calculating the quantity of bread, we use that quantity of bread together with this ratio to get the quantity of milk, which we will then use to calculate the amount of money she got from sale of milk.